Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel, welcome back to Praetor Magic. I'm your host, DM Cross, and if you're watching this video on the day that it comes out, then you're watching it on Tuesday. If you're watching this video on Tuesday, and it's the day that it came out, it's probably Deck Tech Tuesday. As you can also see from your screen, we're going to be doing a Deck Tech again today. On the last episode we did Esper Zombies led by Aloro, and we said that we were going to continue with the Commander 2017 predictions that we had. Now, if you're paying attention to the leaks and the spoilers that have been coming out lately, you already know that we're 0 for 2. Zombies, elves, goblins, and vampires, it hasn't been any of those. However, the Esper Zombies was pretty fun. I think this deck was kind of fun to make, so we're just going to continue with the series because it's fun to just sometimes brew stuff that isn't like tier 1 super optimal. Like my Alicia deck is pretty much an Alicia deck. You didn't have to do anything crazy. My Chorus of the Conclave deck was something that I goldfished, but it was, I bet if I EDH wrecked that, I'd find a lot of cards I use in that kind of a list anyway. So with this stuff, you're doing something very off meta, you're doing something very unique, and that's kind of fun to do. So what we're doing today is going to be the Abzan Elves, Abzan being white, black, and green. And I decided that with elves, first of all, there is no elf in those colors. There's no legendary creature elf in white, black, green. You have some green ones, you have some black green ones, you have some green white ones. I don't think I had any black white ones, but you don't have one of all three colors. So I had to find a different legendary commander, just like I had to do with the Esper Zombies. I had to find a Loro in order to be able to build the deck with those colors, and I wanted to build in the Aloro deck. I wanted the commander to basically sit in the command zone. This one, there aren't a lot of commanders like Aloro where they sit in the command zone and do nothing. So for Abzan, I didn't have that choice. I chose to do something a little bit on theme with elves though, and I made it a tree folk commander, because what do elves love aside from nature, magic, and archery? They love trees. They live in the forest almost constantly, and they protect the forest. They're like woodland protectors, right? So Doran the Siege Tower is a legendary creature tree folk shaman. He costs he costs black, green, white. He's a 0/5. You would almost think that that's kind of a weird thing to be your commander, have no power, but until you read his ability, each creature assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. Before we go too farther, I do want to make sure you guys understand. He's not saying that your power is equal to your toughness or swap them or anything crazy. You are assigning combat damage with your toughness. Your power doesn't come into play with combat damage while Doran's on the field. So it's not like you're attacking and he's a 5/5. So if you have, let's say, Austrian Command where it says destroy all creatures with power I think power 4 or greater, that's not going to kill Doran because he still has 0 power. So it's important to remember that. What I tried to do for this build, I tried to kind of get elves that did have a bigger toughness than power, because that would obviously go well with his team. I'll tell you this, it was not easy. When you looked up white, black, green elves, there was a lot of 2/2s and 1/1s. A lot of them were equal and not with like toughness over. So I think I got the best ones. There's going to be some janky looking ones in here, but overall it's going to be pretty fun. As you guys know, we always start this with 2 categories first, ramp and draw. They're the basics of Magic in general, and they really fuel what you're going to do in a commander game. However, just one thing I am going to change. Normally the card that goes above me is the best card of the category. I'm not going to do that this one. I'm just going to do all these cards are just good for the category. We're going to start off by drawing cards, because it doesn't matter if you ramp out. If you run out of cards, you have nothing to do. So obviously you want to draw cards and keep going. Just like with all the other deck techs, we're going to talk about drawing cards. The first card that we're going to talk about for drawing cards is Lifecrafter's Bestiary. This is a new card from from Kaladesh, and it's a cool artifact that you have to have green in your deck because there's a green mana symbol on it, so that's how the color identity works for Commander. It's an artifact that costs 3. At the beginning of your upkeep, scry 1. That's already pretty cool because your upkeep comes before your draw step, so you can basically say, do I want this card, or do I want to risk not knowing what my next card is? If this is a really good card, I want it. Put it back on top and then draw it. If this is a land and I'm already mana flooded, put it on the bottom. Nothing to worry about. The other ability is what makes this a draw category card. Whenever you cast a creature spell, you may pay a green mana. If you do, draw a card. So it's kind of a way to keep your engine going as long as you're casting more creatures. Pretty cool, and again, it's you can go in any green deck, and green tends to have a little bit more trouble drawing, not as much as let's say white or red, but it can have a little bit of color or a little bit of problems with drawing cards. So this is a good way to fix that. The second card we're going to talk about is a green staple, I want to say. Sylvan Library is an enchantment for 1 and a green. At the beginning of your draw step, you may draw 2 additional cards. If you do, choose 2 cards in your hand drawn this turn. So your regular draw, 2 additional cards. So from those 3 cards, it's not anything in your hand, it's from the cards you've drawn this turn. For each one of those cards, pay 4 life or put the card on top of your library. It's almost like Scry 2 after you draw, but you don't have the option to put it on the bottom of your library. You have to pay life in order to draw it. So depending on if you're gaining a lot of life, you can potentially get extra draws, or you could just set up your next couple of draws for as you keep going. Third card we're going to talk about is Harmonize. Very simplistic sorcery for 2, a green and a green. It's nothing super like broken, but in mono green, you have problems with drawing. This says draw 3 cards, sorcery speed, 4 mana. You're ramping in green anyway, so 4 mana is probably not going to be too bad after like turn 6. If you don't have 4 mana to spare, you're probably not doing green very well. Last card we're going to talk about for drawing cards, there's actually 2. These are kind of weird draws. I like them because they're good value cards. They're both 0/4s, they're both walls, so they have defenders, so they can't attack. They each cost 1 and either a green for Wall of Blossoms or a white for Wall of Omens, and basically just say when they enter the battlefield, draw a card. These are great 2-drops. You put it down, you have a little bit of defense. The cool thing about these is if Doran is on the battlefield, sure they can't attack because they're defenders, but now you have a 4/4 wall. Again, their power isn't 4, but they deal damage as if they're a 4/4 wall. So that's pretty cool. That's it for drawing cards. We're going to get into, obviously, mana ramp next. If we keep having cards, that's great. We have to have enough mana to put these cards onto the battlefield or onto the stack if it's an instant or sorcery. So, how do we mana ramp? With all decks, there are certain things that you can almost promise. Unless you're playing on the 1v1 MagicOnline League, you can probably guarantee you're going to have a Soul Ring. I think there's a Soul Ring in the list. If you have green, Cultivate's a good spell. Spells like Cultivate, that will keep you going. However, what I wanted to highlight in the deck tech is some of the more the non-usual ones, the ones that are going to be specific to elves or specific to this kind of a deck. First card that we're going to talk about, Druid of the Cowl. Druid of the Cowl is not super crazy. It's a 1/3 for 2 mana, 1 and a green. It's an elf druid, so it's an elf, and it taps for 1 green mana. Why would you want this over Elvish Mystic? You're probably wondering, right? Because Elvish Mystic is only 1 green, and it's a 1/1, and it taps for 1 green mana. You can get it out turn 1, and then you can ramp from there. It's a little bit early to ramp. The reason why I wanted to put this in the deck is because it's a 1/3. When Doran's on the field, this is now going to hit for 3 damage, or tap for that 1 green mana. Again, synergy, just trying to think of all the possible ways that you can capitalize on your commander, capitalize on your strategy. Second card is going to be Joraga, Tree Speaker. This is an elf druid. It comes out as a 1/1 for 1 green mana. However, it has a level of ability. For 1 in the green, you can put a level counter on it. As you get a certain number of level counters, you get additional stats and abilities. For instance, for level counters 1 through 4, it becomes a 1/2, and it taps for 2 green instead of just 1. If you get him up to 5 level counters, which is a total of 10 mana you will have put into him, he becomes a 1/4, and all elves you control can tap for green mana. That's super cool, one, because he can again attack as a 4/4, and now he's giving his ability to all elves. So if you do have a 1/1 elf over here, those can now become your mana dorks, while this guy can hit for 4 damage. Pretty cool. Third card, Priest of Titania. This is probably like an elf staple. Any elf deck you run, probably you're going to want Priest of Titania. This is why. It's an elf druid, it's a 1/1, so it doesn't really have the strategy or the synergy with Doran. It costs 1 and a green. And it says, tap, add green mana equal to your mana pool for each elf on the battlefield. That right there, each elf on the battlefield, for 1, means not just your battlefield, it's all battlefields. 2, it's an elf deck. You're going to have a lot of elves. You put this out, she taps for 1 because she's an elf. You put down Joraga Tree Speaker, now she taps for 2. You start making elf tokens somehow, there's a way to make elf tokens in the deck, I promise. She starts tapping for more and more and more, and it gets out of control. The last card that we're going to talk about for mana ramp is Nissa Vastwood Seer and Nissa Sage Animus. Nissa Vastwood Seer is 2 a green. I forget what her stats are off the top of my head, but she's a legendary creature elf. When she enters the battlefield, you go and you find a basic forest and you put it into your hand and then shuffle your library. Whenever a land enters the battlefield, if you have 7 you basically flip her into her Planeswalker form, where she starts off with 3 loyalty. Her +1 is reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land card, put it onto the battlefield. Otherwise, put it in your hand. So, reveal and either draw or mana ramp. Her -2 is to make a legendary 4/4 elemental. I don't really care. I'm not using it for this. Again, we're in the mana ramp category. We're trying to get that +1. Her ultimate is a -7. Untap up to 6 target lands. They become 6/6 elemental creatures. They're still lands. You can use this to ramp if you need. You can use this if you do need to close out the game with creatures. I would be careful, because if somebody finds a way to do a board wipe in the middle of you doing this, you're going to lose those lands. But that's a risk you take when you could potentially be ending the field, because you have 6/6s and maybe you're casting Overrun or something else crazy where you're ending the game. So now that you're mana ramping, you want to be able to do other stuff in the deck, right? So what else do you want to do? You want to start playing to the deck's strengths. In order to do that, you need cards with bigger toughness, right? So the next category is a little bit of a unique one. I call it butt buffers. Listen, hear me out. Hear me out. Typically in Magic, when you have a bigger toughness, it's typically said that you have a big butt creature. That's what we're talking about when we say butt buffers. We're talking about increasing the toughness of your creatures as opposed to their power, because again with Doran, you don't worry about their power when dealing combat damage. First card I want to talk about is Leyline of Vitality. The Leylines are cool cards because they're enchantments that if you have them in your opening hand, you can put them onto the battlefield for free. You don't have to worry about their casting costs. They're already there. They're essentially a turn 0 play. So that's kind of cool. That's its first ability. It costs 2, a green, and a green. Creatures you control get +0/+1. Again, you're not worried about power. You're getting that toughness, which, when Doran's out, is essentially like getting power. And whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may gain a life. There's not so much life gain in this deck that it's a life gain deck, but these little bits here and there are always really cool. The second card is a Quarter Shield. It's again a free card. It is a 0 cost equipment. The equip cost is 3, so even if you get it out turn 1 for 0, you're probably going to have to wait a little bit to equip it to anything, but of course you need a creature to equip it to, so there you go. Equipped creature has +0/+3 and has Vigilance. This is really cool for, let's say the Mana Dorks who had a big butt that we talked about previously. Now you can attack with them, make them even stronger because you're giving them even more toughness, which when Doran's out is more power. And then you can cast stuff with them because they had Vigilance, they didn't tap. Super cool, super synergistic, really like it. Another one of these is Caster's Shield. It's essentially the same exact thing with a different name. In EDH, because it's a singleton format, a lot of times you can only have one way to do a very specific task, but the cool thing about this is that you don't have one way, you have 2 ways, because they're 2 different cards, technically. And the last card for this category is Slagworm Armor. A little bit different than the other ones. It doesn't give Vigilance, and it does cost 1 as opposed to 0. The equip cost is still the same at 3, but instead of +0/+3, it's +0/+6. That's like making a 1/1 into a 7/7. More or less. So for, again, having Doran out on the battlefield, these things can have a lot of impact. Either giving all your creatures a little buff with Leyline, a couple of specific creatures the big buff with +0/+3, +0/+3, or one creature getting a huge upgrade with +0/+6. You put that on Doran, he's a 0/11. He hits for 11. He gets through twice. Somebody's dead by commander damage with his butt. That's fantastic. The next category, though, we're going to talk about is combat tricks. I am an aggro player. I like to do things during combat. I like to essentially kill people on the combat step. That's kind of how I was taught. That's how you win in Magic. You cast creatures and then you hit people with them. This deck has some interesting combat tricks. We're going to start off with Bar the Door. It's an instant. It costs 2 and a white. Creatures you control get +0/+4 until end of turn. Again, this is cool because you can use it defensively or you can use it offensively because of its instant speed. You can attack, wait for them to declare blockers, see if it's worth it to get this extra 4 damage per creature that gets through, or let's say you don't. Let's say you hold it up. Now they attacking you, you can give your creatures a +4/+4, again, not really power, and maybe wipe the field depending on how they attack and how you choose to block, and of course if they have anything. Second one that we're going to talk about, Solidarity, is 3 and a white. Creatures you control get +0/+5 until end turn. Instant speed, pretty much the same thing. costs a little bit more, a little bit extra toughness. Tower defense is another one. This one's really cool because it's 1 and a green, instant speed, still gives your creatures +0, +5, but also gives them reach. There's not a lot of reach, or like, I don't have so many archers in the deck that it's a big theme. So this kind of thing can really turn it around if your opponent has a lot of flyers or something crazy like that. Last card that we're going to talk about though, Tree of Perdition. This one is a funny card. So Tree of Perdition is a creature, plant, black. It's a 0/13. So already you would think that it's going to hit for 13 damage. However, it has Defender, so it won't be attacking. It costs 3 and a black. The really cool thing about Tree of Perdition is that if you tap it, you exchange target opponent's life total with Tree of Perdition's toughness. So you get this tree out, let's say turn 4. Turn 5, you go to attack. They don't block, you're dealing, let's say, 14 damage. You activate Tree of Perdition, they only have 13 life all of a sudden, while Tree of Perdition becomes a 0/40, which means he can hit for 40? There are ways to actually get creatures to lose Defender and to be able to attack. I could have put them in there for kind of like a wombo combo kind of thing, but I figured that was too specific. So that's it for combat tricks. I think there might be one more on the list. We'll have to see at the end. I can't remember all the cards because it's been a while since I put the deck together at this point. But still, these are like interesting things that people won't see coming. They're not going to expect the trees to hit you, the elves to hit you with their big butts just because you have your dumb tree on the field. The next category that we're going to talk about, however, is Legendary Elves. Again, it's an elf deck. Elves have probably some of the most synergistic legendary creatures. They're very tribal in the sense that they typically always rely on having either a lot of them or big other elves, or they make elves or something crazy like that. So the legendary elves in this deck are all typically tribal and synergistic in that same right. First one that we're going to talk about is I can never say this right, Dwynen Guiltleaf Dain. He's a legendary creature, of course. He's an elf warrior. He's a 3/4, so again with Doran out, he hits like a 4/4. He costs 2, a green and a green. He has reach. That's already pretty cool because I already said there's not a lot of reach, there's not a lot of archers in the deck, so he's a defender against flyers. Other elf creatures you control get +1/+1. Alright, I mean it's not +0/+1, but who cares? It's still the +1 on your toughness, and that's all you need. Whenever he attacks, you gain 1 life for each attacking elf you control. So if he attacks, you're already getting 1 life from him. If he attacks with 20 friggin' elves, you're getting 20 life. Again, I said that there wasn't a huge life gain theme in the deck. However, there's little bits and pieces that make it probably pretty good. The next legendary elf that we're going to talk about is probably one of the more famous one, Azuri Renegade Leader. Legendary creature, another elf warrior. It's almost like warriors are like the sub-tribal theme. It's really not, but it almost feels like that. He's a 2/2 by himself. He costs 1, a green and a green. His first ability is not like super crazy. For 1 force, you can regenerate another target elf, so he can't regenerate himself, but he can keep potentially other elves on the field when maybe somebody tries to board wipe or target removal. You know, somebody tries to get rid of your Priest of Titania because you're ramping way too crazy. You turn out like boop, regenerate it, make sure that that sticks around. His second ability, however, is the one that typically ends games. For 2 green, 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 elf creatures you control get +3/+3 and gain trample until end of turn. This will put games away. Elves have a way of getting a lot of mana really fast because typically in, like, let's say he's the leader of a deck, you have mono green, you have Priest of Titania, you have Karametra's Acolyte, which gives you mana equal to your devotion to green. Then you have Nixos, which gives you mana equal to a devotion of a color, and you're going to pick green. Just off those 3 alone, you're going to probably pump out like 15 mana, activate him 3 times because it doesn't require him to tap. You're going to give everything +9/+9 and trample. Even if you have 1/1s, like let's say you have 5 1/1s, now you have 5 10/10s with trample. Somebody's probably dead. God forbid you then have the mana left over to play a Craterhoof after that, everybody's dead. Not one person, everybody's dead. The third legendary elf that I want to talk about is Riss the Redeemed. Riss the Redeemed is a cool commander because, 1, he's super cheap. He costs either 1 mana of either green or white. Hybrid, you can do whatever you want with it. He's a 1/1, again, elf warrior. the Treefolk Shaman, man, he's bringing his warriors to the table. And what Risk does, however, is he doesn't come alone. For 2 and a hybrid of either green or white and tap, he can put a 1/1 green and white elf warrior creature token into play. That's alright. That's not bad. It's not great. 3 mana to get a 1/1. However, as the game goes on and you get more and more ramp, you can tap 4 and then 2 hybrid of green and white and Risk Redeemed. And for each creature token you control, put a token into play that's a copy of that creature. That's insane. That's insane. For every token, it doesn't even have to be an elf token. You could have wolf tokens, you could have sapperlings, you could have bugs, you could have bears, you could have zombie crocodiles because we have black in the deck. I don't care. Anything you're making a token of, you can double it. Super cool, super crazy, it can get out of control. And because he comes in cheap, you can probably potentially activate his first ability a couple times by the time you work up to 6 mana. So you already have a couple tokens, so that first time you activate a 6 mana ability, you might be getting like 3 or 4 tokens onto the battlefield extra. And then it's only going to keep doubling from there on out, and doubling. If people don't board wipe or get rid of Risk, they're going to have a big problem, especially if Azuri comes out and does that +9/+9 trick. Or imagine Priest of Titania coming out when you're pumping out like double the elves every turn. That's doubling her mana that she pumps out every turn, which then she can pour into Azuri. It's a crazy combination. It's out of control. It's stupid and it shouldn't be allowed. The last legendary elf, though, guys, that we're going to talk about is Nath of the Gilt Leaf. He's a little different. 1, he's the only legendary elf that we have with black. He costs 3, a black and a green. He's a 4/4. Again, no super crazy Doran synergies. He is, again, an elf warrior, legendary creature. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may have target opponent discard a card at random. That's not terrible on its own. It's not super great because you don't get to pick, but then neither do they. So there's always a potential that they're going to get their hand disrupted in a big way. Maybe their board wipe that they were going to cast next turn to get rid of all your elf tokens. Maybe the draw spell that they really needed because they only had a couple cards left. But that's not the really cool part. Whenever an opponent discards a card, you may create a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token. So more ways to get these little 1/1s. That's what elves do. They get little 1/1s and little 1/1s and little 1/1s, and it gets insane. These 4 legendary creatures actually have a lot of synergy together. Nath gives you disruption and tokens. Risk gives you tokens and then tokens. Azuri makes your little token army super big. And then Dwayne gives you life and makes your tokens a little bit bigger, just statically, so that you don't lose to, let's say, I forget what the black spell is, but it gives all token creatures -1/-1. Dwayne's on the battlefield, you don't lose all your elf tokens. That's fantastic. The next category that we're going to talk about, guys, for this deck is honorary mentions. There's a couple of cards that don't fall into any one of the categories that we've already talked about. However, they're super cool or they're very synergistic, one or the other, and I wanted to take a quick minute to talk about them. First one being one of my favorites, Ikra Shadiki, the Usurper. Ikra is one of the partner commanders that came from the last commander set, and she is not an elf, not a warrior. So hey, we broke a combo breaker. Combo breaker! 7, so with Doran on the battlefield, she's going to hit like a 7/7. She costs a 3, a black and a green, pretty much like Nath. She has Menace, which means that she can only be blocked by 2 or more creatures. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you gain life equal to that creature's toughness. Essentially, with her and Doran on the battlefield, you're giving them lifelink off their butts. She does have partner, but you're not going to need partner. There are no partner. I don't think there are any other partners in this deck, although I guess Sidar Kondo almost could work because of how many of the elves have power 2 or less. But I wouldn't worry about it too much because, again, with things like Azuri or, you know, Overrun or Overwhelming Stampede or Craterhoof Behemoth, you're not always going to have 2/2s, and you don't want to worry about Sidar basically being a wasted slot. Next honorary mention that we have is Korazada, right? Right. Guild Mage. Elf Shaman, not a warrior, not a legendary creature for the first time in a little while. It's only a 2/2. Costs a black and a green. His top ability isn't super crazy. For 1 black green, target creature gets +1/+1 and gains Intimidate until end of turn. Intimidate being that they can't block except by artifact creatures and or creatures that share a color type with it. So for instance, if you wanted to block Ikra, you need an artifact creature, a black creature, or a green creature, or some combination of the three. His bottom ability though, for 2, a black and a green, sacrifice a non-token creature. Create X 1/1 green sapling creature tokens where X is a sacrificed creature's toughness. So imagine, just off what we're showing here on the screen, if you sacrifice Shadiki to the Guild Mage, you just got 7 1/1 saplings. That's pretty cool. That's honestly super cool. I think Guild Mage would do better if we had put Praetor as our commander, which allows you to play stuff from your graveyard. That way you could sack it to the Guild Mage and then bring it back. But still, I believe that you could do this at instant speed if you have the mana open. And basically, you killed my creature? No, I'm sacking it to my Guild Mage and getting something out of it. Super cool, super awesome. Card 3, though, is going to be Lys Alana Huntmaster. I almost always say Hunts Master, and I don't know why. This is an elf warrior, so we're going back to the warriors. It's a 3/3. It costs 2, a green and a green, and says whenever you cast an elf spell, which you're going to be doing a lot, you may create a 1/1 green elf warrior token. More warriors! All the warriors! If you need a warrior and you need an elf, this is the deck for you. Because they come in all colors, because I think Risk made green-white ones, right? I almost think Nath should make green-black ones. That seems only fair. But we can't change the way the cards are printed. However, we can talk about the last one in this little category right here, which is Prowess of the Fair. Prowess of the Fair is an interesting card because it's a tribal enchantment. They didn't do a lot of these. It's a tribal enchantment elf. So I guess if you found a way to search for an elf card, you could find this card. It costs a colorless and a black, and says whenever another non-token elf is put into your graveyard from play, so from the battlefield, you may put a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token into play. So now, let's say you sack an elf to your Guild Mage, you can then get another elf on top of the fact that you got a bunch of saplings. And the saplings you can use for whatever you want. You can use them for blockers, you can use them for little points of damage. You can, I don't care what you use them for. You use them for whatever you want. I don't tell you how to live your life. But that's it for the honorary mention, guys. And we're going to move right into the end. So what is here at the end for 1? The deck list. I'm sure John's going to probably pan this so that you guys can see it, to make sure that the font is pretty clear. As you can see, there's a lot of ramp in the deck. We didn't go over everything because we only went over those 4 cards that are kind of unique. Again, I like to have Chromatic Lantern in every one of my 3-color decks because it helps fix issues where like you're getting all your white sources, none of your green, none of your black, or vice versa, whatever. Commander Sphere is, again, mana fixer, draw. The signets are just super good. Land tax in any white deck where maybe you're not having a lot of draw, land tax is super good. Or if you're ever behind, land tax is super good because it allows you to thin your deck and get lands out. Oracle of Moldiah, again, green staple. You can play lands off your top of your library and you can get an extra land per turn. Why would you not want that? And then there's a couple other things in here. There's another couple of legendary elf creatures that I didn't really put because they weren't as synergistic. As you saw, we had a theme of like tokens and what you do with a wide field and a lot of elves. The other two didn't really deal with making a lot of elves. There's a lot of removal. I felt I didn't need to talk about removal here. I've done black and white decks with the Alicia and Esper. If you don't know what kind of removal I'm packing in a black-white deck, then you're not paying attention. There are some cool support cards that we didn't go over. Freyalise gives you, is actually almost like a mana ramp because she makes elf druids that tap for mana. Deathrite Shaman is the planeswalker that's not a planeswalker. He has all kinds of cool abilities. Asceticism is kind of cool protection for your creatures, gives them hexproof. Nisa Ravane is in here with Nisa's Chosen so that you can again gain life for elves that you have on the battlefield. Well-Wisher, gain life for elves on the battlefield. Wilt Leaf Liege gives green and white creatures each +1/+1. So if you have a creature like, let's say, Risk the Redeemed, who has both, he gets +2/+2. So he goes from being a 1/1 for 1 green or white mana to a 3/3 for green or white mana, and he pumps out 3/3s because they're green and white. Overall, the cost of this deck, guys, was not super crazy. It only came out to be $267.91 off TCG Player. If you're playing online, you can get it for $83.59. That's before price optimization. I'm sure it probably comes down a little bit more. I didn't go super crazy with the lands on this one. You probably could. You could do the shock lands and all like the bad lands and stuff like that if you really wanted to. That would probably skyrocket the price, but I didn't feel like I needed to do that. I felt that this deck was a little bit more challenging than the Esper Zombies. I felt that Zombies have a little bit better synergy in their colors than Abzan Elves did. Not that Elves don't have synergy, don't get me wrong. Elves are extremely synergistic. If you build a mono green elf deck with Azuri at the helm, my wife Danielle runs one, it's crazy, and it just... How does it do 40 damage on turn 5 every game? I don't know. It doesn't make sense. It's not fair. But it does. However, when you're talking about green, white, black, it's a little bit different. They're not really equipped to go into white, and there's only so many black cards that support elf strategies. So, we also, black gave us access to a couple of tutors for this, as you can see down with the Mono Tutor and Diabolic Tutor, so that was pretty cool too. Elvish Harbinger is an elf tutor, so there's ways to go and find what you're looking for. Black gives you that capability, which is super cool. It also gives you another kind of ramp if you want to put, like, let's say, Cryptgas in there with the Urborg Tome of Yawgmoth combo. Urborg turning all your lands into swamps in addition to what they are. Cryptgas says all your swamps tap for whatever they tap for, and then black as well. Black mana as well. You can do that combo if you want. I chose not to because Cryptgas is, I believe, a spirit or a horror. He's not an elf. I tried to keep it to as many elves as I could. However, guys, that's it for the deck. I don't get to play stuff like this too often, but when I do, it's always super fun. Hopefully somebody can try this out or suggest maybe some improvements. Maybe I missed some things. I am by all means willing to upgrade and improve on my decks. Guys, if you liked this video, leave me a like and a comment telling me what you liked, what you didn't like, what I can improve on. If you liked the video, of course, subscribe for more. There's more Deck Tech Tuesdays coming, not to mention our MagicOnline Commander Leagues, our casual Commander Days when we do those, and just more cool stuff coming. Make sure you ring the bell on your way out. That way you get notifications when we do upload a video. You can follow all of us on Twitter. Myself, I'm at DM_Cross. Praetor Magic is at Praetor Magic. And then the others from the MagicOnline Commander League, I'll put links to theirs in the description below. I'm not going to go through all of them, but you can follow them on Twitter as well. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and until next time, peace. Love y'all.